here in Lagos, the center of excellence, we are going to look at something that is really biting head on Nigerians, as it has also drawn the attention of the World Bank. We've seen international bodies as the IMF also coming out to speak regarding the economic situation in the country. Just last week, we saw a recent intriguing revelation from the World Bank, and we're going to look at it drastically this morning. Well, the World Bank has reported that a staggering 129 million Nigerians are trapped in poverty. And the situation is only getting worse due to skyrocketing inflation. Well, this number represents a significant increase from 40.1 million people previously living below the national poverty line. It released a report on Thursday in Abuja as Nigerians lamented the worsening hunger nationwide and also wondered when the country's ballooning rates of inflation would slow down. Now, the Global Financial Body's report revealed that over 129 million Nigerians who now live below the national poverty line represented a sharp rise from 40.1% in 2018 to 56% in 2024. The World Bank Nigeria Development Update report paints a bleak picture of poverty in Nigeria, and it's essential to address the issue to ensure a better future for the Nigerian people. I honestly believe that there is no better time than now to talk about this recent update from the World Bank. So before we dive into everything already, now let's listen to the president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adeshina, as he shared some insights.
What are we supposed to be? Suddenly, Nigeria, 64 years after independence, should not be a developing country. Nigeria should be a developed nation. As president of the African Development Bank, as I travel around Africa, one issue that often marks conversations is, when will Nigeria develop? I have listened to several leaders tell me that the rise of Africa depends on the rise of Nigeria. As the largest black nation on earth, we carry within us the hopes and aspirations of all black people in the world. The yearnings that this nation will become a beacon in the world and an inspiration that will elevate the whole continent of Africa. It is therefore time that we start thinking of Nigeria.
Yes, indeed. It is therefore time that we start thinking of Nigeria as a developed nation already, because it seems there's so much to do, especially in this part of the world. And also, over the weekend as well, we saw a former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, revealing intriguing revelation. Take a look.
You cannot talk of developing human capacity when you don't have what I call adequate health delivery service for your people. And I talk of, if you don't want to talk about alleviation of poverty, talk about wealth creation. I say to people, the world is fed up with talking about poverty in Africa. God has not created Africa for a land of poverty. We made Africa a land of poverty.
Honestly, one thing I can deduce from what the former president said is God hasn't made Africa a land of poverty. And I love the fact that he actually is having the blame game done and holding our leaders and politicians accountable. That's the whole essence of this conversation this morning. Well, right here, I am being joined by Otumba Kenny. He is a public commentator, and this morning he's going to take us through everything that you need to know. A pleasure having you, sir. Good morning.
Thank you very much. It has always been a great pleasure to be with you on independent television and radio. The issue of poverty, the issue of 129 million Nigerians being poor, has been on with us for quite some time. It's not new to us. And even in the last administration, we had the multidimensional poverty covered about 133 million people. So you see now that the figures is not at much at variance. But let us now try to understand what do we mean when we say people are multidimensionally poor.
I think we should even start with poverty, and now we're seeing multi-dimensional poverty. How does
No,
it
if you
relate?
look, what I'm saying is, if you say poverty, it means people are poor. Now we're beginning to talk of poorest of the poor. Now let us now define poverty in the real sense of it. Poverty does not stop at not being able to have access to food, because what is common in Nigeria now is hunger and starvation, which people do, and which people rarely regarded as being poor. But poverty now has now gone beyond only hunger and hunger and starvation. Poverty now has extended to access to quality health. How many Nigerians really have access to quality health? You need to go to the hospital and see. There are no drugs in the hospital. The drugs are out of reach. Quite a lot of multinational companies who are in the form of producing this drug have left Nigeria, and I don't think we have enough buffer. So you find that the drugs are now astronomical. Drug that you buy maybe in 3,000 naira, 3,005 is almost getting to 45,000 now. That tells you then the second one is quality education. We know now that the access to, we have 20 million Nigerian, 20 million both people in secondary school and primary school, out of school children. That tells you what we're talking about. And look at the current distribution across our school when it's been more. Look at the quality of teachers that are there. Then we begin to talk of a living standard. Access to good living. How many Nigerians are living well? Are living well in a manner that they say they are living. Living is not just existing. They were probably talking about access to services, qualitative services. We know now that this question of poverty has further been exacerbated by the protracted insecurity that are permeated our environment, and we spend, for instance, during the last administration, 12 trillion was appropriated to manage the security interfaces, and we saw that nothing much was achieved. Even this administration, appropriation of almost estimate of 3 trillion was appropriated for security interfaces. Though we give kudos to what they've done, the report they're beginning to give, but can we say we've come to a point of El Dorado? The answer is still no. We're still very far from, because people can't go to farm. Really, why we're having a bit of changes in the food inflation rate is because of the harvest season. You can imagine the effect of the climate change. Borno, Maiduguri being flooded. So those are the real thing. Those are the real definition of poverty. And from what we've gathered now, if you look at it carefully, in FY 2018, we recorded the poverty of poor people, 40.1 Nigerians that are poor. Then in this year, 2024, we now recorded 56% of Nigerians that are poor. In terms of population, if we base World Bank at 129, we're beginning to look at it. Then let's now look carefully this year. This year, we've been able to add 14 million Nigerians that are poor. So that is mind-boggling. And if you now look at the poverty rate that we're talking about, we begin to look at the access to life. Most of the children, for instance, in Northeast, 90% are very poor. In Northwest, 90% for the children. You understand? Because we are beginning to talk of the children. People are supposed to care. If there's no access, and in the Southwest, it's about 74. Sorry, in Southeast it's 74. It's only in Southwest we recorded something substantial, which is in the range of 60 something. Now, come to think of it, if you look at the population profile, the poverty profile in the north is about 65%, which means we are having almost over 80 something people that are poor, and in the south we still have about 35%, which we are having over 40, which is about 47 million that are poor. So we now begin to look at it carefully. Why are we poor? In view of how God has blessed us beyond measure. And one of the fundamentals that we see is the the aftermath of the last administration. For instance, the ways and means about 30 trillion is quite cumbersome. You know, the kind of recklessness we went through in the last administration has also, and recklessness in terms of ways and means, which which we have to pay anyway, which this administration can collateralize. And in fact, this administration in the view, there were insinuations they pay. No, they've not paid. They've only been able to extend the life of a 40-year plan to pay such fund. So which means those are the issues. Insecurity too has crept in, and not being able to have a lot of cohesiveness in terms of people working together, working in unity and peace.
Now, with everything you've said, it seems like Nigeria, we're kind of like in for something great. Not trying to be pessimistic this morning, because from the World Bank recent revelation, 129 million Nigerians, if we had to take that out of the total, number of persons we have in the country, that's like a lot. That's like almost over half of Nigerian populations. And it begs the question of how really did we get here? Because judging from statistics and reports, there is a school of thought that says what we're going through right now in the country didn't even start from today. It started 40 years ago. What do you have to say regarding that?
Let's be frank. The problem we have today did not start today. Is that the result of leadership, inefficiency that protracted over a long period, over a series of administration. Though we will say some administration have come into being, they contributed a quota, but they've not been able to impact significantly the issue of poverty. Come to think of it, proud before this time around, before the independence, we were not as poor as this. You understand? Where we have the western region, we have the northern region. There were focus. It was the advent of oil that is supposed to channel a new course of direction that should have projected us on a new pedestal. But what we did is that we forgot what we used to do before. We now focus on, and what really crippled the entire atmosphere is the issue of systemic and endemic corruption. People are endemically very corrupt. That over the years, you understand, people that have been put in position of authority have always been for themselves, not for Nigeria. So incidentally, corruption has eaten deep, and also ethnic diversity, religious bigotry. Those are the real issue. Not being able to find a cohesive force, and that has lingered for too long. And in order to be able to begin to take advantage of a lot of vices came up. We are talking of Boko Haram, that is called the Boko Haram manifested into terrorism. We now we talk of in the southeast. We are talking about state at home. We are talking unknown gunmen in the southwest. We are talking about OPC, Odua People's Congress in the north central. We are beginning to do farmer headers class. These are vices that are coming to being to suppress people, and also created a lot of long-lasting impact on how Nigeria. You will see that the level of productivity we have dropped, and it suffices to say now that we are more import dependent, even in food production. Come to think of it, what is the capacity of productive capacity? If we look at the entire productive capacity in Nigeria, is about 1.2 hectares. Production capacity, whereas it's lower than average value of 2.2 hectares in Africa. And yet Nigeria is blessed with arable. We're talking of arable land in Nigeria. I'm talking about over 30-something thousand million hectares of land. No, Nigeria is really blessed. So come to think of, so what we're going through is as a result of leadership, gross inefficiency, corruption, ethnic bigotry, religious bigotry. Those are the things, and it has so much crippled into it. The so-called political leader have used this as a weapon to actually, milk the nation. In fact, you will see clearly now that what is been happening. We said, there is poverty on the land, and yet the political class do not reflect what they want. Rather than their budget keep on increasing, they keep on living their ostentatious life that does not reflect what we're doing. There is a lot of estaco, there's a lot of traveling that come there, a lot of people that goes abroad, and you find that even the political leaders are more dollarized than what we do. For instance, quite a lot. You can see we are purchasing aircraft again. We are purchasing bulletproof car again, almost in billions. So if you look at it carefully, the political class who are in government have not been able, in terms of this, though we
Right.
appreciate the policies they are putting on, we appreciate the reform they are putting on, which is quite normal. But the question is, who are the one managing reform?
Now, are Nigerians really appreciating all of the policies and reforms being on at this point? Speaking about political class, we saw last week one of the senators, Orji Uzokalu, came out to complain just like an average Nigerian. Interestingly, what is going on right now is affecting the rich, the poor, every single person. And then he made a shocking revelation of the fact that he earns 14 million naira every month as his salary, the total package, and how right now it is not enough for him, to show you how it's also affecting him in his own way. And of course, a lot of Nigerians reacted to that. It begs the question of the politicians, are they really in touch with what is going on? Do you think they have an idea of how to move Nigeria from where it is now to where it ought to be?
Thank you very much. I think we've been very greatly unfortunate about the kind of the class of political class that we have. For instance, he is talking about the salary he had. How about all the emolument that he has? From reliable sources, each senator got about 29 million every month. So if they are coming in to say it's not enough, that shows you high level of insensitivity. For instance, one of the people that we have, the poverty line has so deepened in the sense that we have only two classes in Nigeria now. It's either you are poor, you are rich. There's no middle class any longer. That tells you now that if any politician comes aboard to town, they are only being clannish, clandestine issue. They are raising clandestine issue, and they are being comedic on what they do. Because many of these politicians have been billionaires over the year. I mean, the Kalu you are talking about has been a billionaire since the days of Babangida. So if he's coming in to say, is he making jest of Nigeria? Is he telling us the reality of things? What are he spending? Come to think of this, if he says it's not enough, most of us is spending are financed, most of their life are completely financed through our budget. So we should not rely on one politician comes at us. They only speak what comes into them, and they only want to show, you understand, to show, I mean, the moral code is highly very deficient in the political class. So we shouldn't come to think, rather than we should begin to speak within ourselves, how can we resolve issues? How can we ensure that we come to a point of unity that we'll be able to address the real issue? Because you see, when two elephant fights, it's ground that suffer. Political class are there, the government are there, they are in a court concordia. And most of what we do, we find that the elitists are the one that are enjoying most now, because most of what their bills are being paid by us. And in fact, the multinational company that they are almost there, they are so running. So we only have two class now: very rich people who are either multimillionaire, who depend on government patronage, multinational, who have been having a lot of rebate from the government. In fact, many workers now are poorly remunerated. Look at the kind of devaluation we had. Nigeria, the naira means almost next to nothing, because Nigeria is over devalued for more than 70% now. So what are we talking about? Right,
there's a lot of things to talk about. Speaking about workers, as you mentioned, I know someone who came out to say right now, for you to even move out of poverty, it's not just the unemployed that are going through a lot. Even persons who are employed right now could also be categorized as still being poor. And then let's not also forget we have those who are underpaid as well. How did we get here?
We got there by the fact that we couldn't manage ourselves effectively. It is poor management of economy. Come to think of it now, we want to manage this economy effectively. We're saying we went through a kind of euphoria of saying subsidy is gone. When the word of subsidy is gone means that the breadth of life of people is gone. Because, for instance, PMS is the lifeline of people. Not only do they use it for moving from one point to the other, it's the one, it runs life privately, because people use it at home, people use it to grant, people down the bottom line there. So once that is gone there, you are now talking of floating of naira. We are talking of willing buyer, a willing seller, everything coming on board. We are talking about, I appreciate the fact that government is saying they want to increase the tax net, you understand, but we begin to see astronomical increase in all the taxes that is coming out, and not only at the federal level, and also at the subnational level. Subnational level inefficiency is even very grandstanding. So if you look at it carefully, can we say we're doing well? We're doing well by policy, but we're not doing well by implementation.
Okay. So still on the report from the World Bank, one of those things they said, aside giving us statistics of the current situation regarding the number of persons poor in Nigeria, they also came out to commend the government, saying the reforms and all of the policies, the tightening monetary policy and all of that is on at the moment is a good one, a good way forward. And the theme of what they said was stay on the course, and they gave a duration for it, 15 years they said. Now with this duration given, the current administration would have been out already. It begs the question of, would Nigerians, by the grace of God, some Nigerians still be alive to see the light at the end of the tunnel that the World Bank is portraying to the leaders?
Thank you very much. Yes, Nigeria will see the light, because I'm not a pessimistic person, and it is true we are in for quite a lot of struggle. The reform they're doing are the likely reform that we should have done. But the problem we're saying is that those who are doing reform, do they apply themselves to that reform? The answer is no, because there is no kind of control and discipline among them. They are more or less living the best of their life, you know, so in terms of purchases, in terms of in terms of being dollarized. Those are the things that we're talking about, and that itself is sitting deep into it. For instance, the support, the social intervention support has dropped again, has dropped reliably by 25.4%, which quite a lot of organizations, like we, for instance, Ferry Group, which is in the Southwest Caucus, are beginning to say government should be very careful in looking at the World Bank. In as much as I appreciate World Bank, I also want Nigeria to reflect on what Bank has done to do. I also want Nigeria to look back at the World Bank as we talk of structural adjustment program that they did. Did it impact Nigeria? No. In fact, let me tell you, the impact is so poor. So when we're looking at, so we have to domicile most of all the policy. In as much as I agree that yes, we're taking a lot of money from World Bank, we should domicile it. It's not every time we're going to be very following what World Bank is doing, because it's going to have a rim. If you say 15 years, it means that the administration, for instance, is 4 years. Every election comes 4 years, which means now that if we look at it carefully, this administration is coming here. It's only the people that is running administration that will have best of time. They have best of time because most of all those things they have are enabled by law, and by the time they go, you understand, they will have gone living their best of life, and Nigeria will be poor. Nigeria will not have felt the impact of what they. So the impact is in the future, not now. But now we need to begin to talk of, even if things are not going well, there are also a better strategy we could do in order for us to be able to create a leverage on For instance, the issue of palliative has been a kind of a menace to us. Quite a lot of fund, there are quite a lot of fund have gone into it. Suffice to say, if you look at it now, from May 29, 2023 to October 2024, federal government intervention has risen to about 10.5 trillion naira. That is mind-boggling. For instance, if you look at it carefully, for economic growth plan, we have about 2.5 trillion. For national social investment program, we have about 1.5 trillion. That is one. For anchor borrower fund, we have about 500 billion. For presidential enabling business council, we have about 500 billion. Infrastructure development fund, we have 2.5 trillion. Social welfare program, we have 1.5 trillion. The economy and power initiative, we have 1 trillion. And come to think of it, the subnational from the May to this have received about 2.1 trillion, and that means now that the average increase across the subnational is over 60 billion. That tells you now that more money have gone into it, more money have gone into the various arms of government, but the people are not feeling any significant impact. You can imagine if 10.2 trillion have gone. Look at the debt we had. Proud before in the last administration, it's about 77 trillion, but now we are now over 120 trillion. That the difference is over 50 trillion. We are beginning to look at it. What is the impact of this debt we have? What direct impact would them? How has it been appropriated? For instance, social welfare package. If Nigerians are going through the kind of debacle, For instance, there's a lot of cushioning effect. The cushioning effect we had has not been very, very forthcoming, in the sense that it's only the elitists that are enjoying it.
Okay.
If government brings any think of the agricultural program they're doing. How many of it has gone to the peasant farmer? You think of it. So we're beginning to see is the commercial farmer. So there's a need for us to domicile, and quite a lot of factors are involved that have resulted into this issue we're talking of poverty. And it is imperative that we actually mention those factors, so that, because these factors are what people should understand clearly with a view to take charge of our life. For instance, we know in our life, the people, the quality of the people, the input of the people, how people will be able to work together. Look at people, for instance, look at it carefully. The GDP is the cumulative contribution of people, but how many people are really working now? The productive capacity has gone now. No? We are more dependent, we are more of a consuming nation. In fact, what we are producing ourselves, we can't even have access to it. That tells you that we are really in. And there's a need for us to look at what are the critical factors that is responsible for this, so that we all know our responsibility. We all know how to hold our leaders accountable.
Speaking about holding leaders accountable, do you think Nigerians should take this report from the World Bank seriously? Because let's not also forget, in other climates, when you go there, in America, you see that agriculture has been subsidized. Is it even possible for a whole nation to move and operate things without having subsidy placed in something or the other? Should we be looking at placing subsidy on agriculture?
Let me be frank with you. No nation can survive without subsidy. In fact, look at developed nations. Look at how much money. I'm talking about trillions of naira. Look at Germany. Look at France. For instance, areas that are very, very germane, that oils the nation productive capacity, is energy. Most of all these nations subsidize their energy. In France, it is subsidized for industrial sector. So there's no nation that can survive without subsidy. But how have we managed our own subsidy? It's like is a recycling effect. The subsidy regime is a recycling effect. If you move for one, it passes through some few hands, you understand, and few Nigerians will have a spiral effect, and they say they're doing it for Nigeria. You can see the problem that we have. It is because of corruption, deep greed that is them. It's because of this corruption that have exacerbated the issue of insecurity. And this insecurity, what happened is what is depleting our resources. For instance, the oil, the primary source of oil that we have, 10 billion have been stolen on a monthly basis. Oil. Come to think of the mineral resources that they have, it is being colored with Boko Haram, with terrorists. You can imagine how few Nigerians are becoming monumentally rich. I'm talking about less than 2% of Nigeria are monumentally rich, whereas over 80% of Nigeria are monumentally poor. That is, being able to at level of affordability. Look at it carefully. If the multidimensional poverty we have is about 63% now, that tells you. That means now that 63% don't have means of livelihood. They don't have access to quality education. What you are now talking about, which means now that what is creeping, what is going to add to it, is what we call urban poor. Because the mere fact that you are in urban, many people are extremely very poor in urban. We call them urban poor. There's a rural, there's urban. But even in the urban settlement, there is urban poor. Because quite a lot of people who are living within the urban sector are extremely very, very poor. Some of them could not even afford a between $2 or $3 a day to feed. That tells you the kind of state we're into. That tells you the kind of... Look, people always say, the political class saying we're going through excruciating pain, that we should persevere, we should endure, that at the end of the day we will. I agree. But when you are going through excruciating pain and you are suffering from kwashiorkor, won't that affect the outcome of that pregnancy? How do you safeguard that within that pregnancy period the person who is pregnant will not even go on extinction? Those are the real issues that we need to begin to look at carefully. But I also imply that we still need to examine why are we poor. When we look at those factors, Nigeria will be very clear, picture.
Okay, let's have the factors real quickly, because I'll still love us to talk about the minimum wage situation. But what are those factors?
The factors that we're talking about, not being able to control inflation. You find out that monetary policy and fiscal policy at variance with one another. The government is trying its best in monetary policy. For instance, they've been able to raise the monetary MPR monetary policy rate to 27.5, which has attracted a lot of the investment into the country. But what happened? It has another counterproductive in the sense that the lending rate is almost very high, over 35%. How many companies can company can go for the bank to go and lend money? No, which means the productive capital has diminished, and also how many of the private organization can still afford the minimum wage we're talking about? Quite a lot of people cannot afford it, you understand, because they are not even producing. If the productive capital has been scaled down, which means a lot of people who are earning the remuneration they're earning cannot even afford, has contributed to it. So the inflation is a very strong factor that we're doing. If the core inflation is 27.4 and the full inflation 37.8, you understand, all those factors has crippled. Inflation is number one. Then two, poor economic management. We've seen a lot of issue in monetary policy, but as the monetary policy is in sync with fiscal policy, there's a lot of financial recklessness. There's a lot of subvention that is going. There's a lot of palliative that is going, but the palliative is not reaching the people. It's just circulating. It's just like creating an eddy current issue among few people. So few elites, which are less than 2%, are the one enjoying the thing. That tells you the problem that we have. Then we have external shock. The external shock has a dropping the purchasing power of the people. External, for instance, we have Ukraine issue, which has Russian-Ukraine issue, which has exacerbated issue effect on maize production. You can imagine the maize production in Nigeria. We've been able to do 1 trillion, and the target we have is about 4 trillion, which we're still expecting more. The rice productive capacity we're going to do, we are more or less contributing about 1.2 hectares instead of having a productive capacity. China is doing about 6 hectares. You understand? China is 6 times of what we do on the particular acreage we are doing. Those are the real issue that is causing it. And then two, you find that many people now are looking at our leaders who have access to this free fund. The political class, we can have Yahoo people. People don't want to work now because they rather look. For instance, politics has been the only easiest cause through which people have money. Those are the factors. So the only way to do now is to hold our leadership accountable. And what are all those factors that we're saying? So which is creating is the slow pace of the reform. In the local government, we've been talking about local government autonomy. For instance, if local government is functional, why would people be rushing to Abuja every day? Abuja is congested because this is the seat of power. That's the people exercise their influence, and it's these same political classes that are frustrating this issue. At the subnational level, even if you look at subnational level, the engrossing efficiency across the state, you can imagine you have about 36 states. I can tell you, only 4 of the states we say is productive. As of now, only 4 of the states.
Speaking about the states, let's move over to the issue of the minimum wage. Last week, we saw the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, come out to say that he is ready to pay, he has approved 85,000 naira for the minimum wage. And also just recently, the Rivers State Governor again came out to sign in 85,000 naira as the minimum wage in the state. While we also have some state governors who are complaining, saying we cannot pay the 70,000 naira minimum wage. Some are still paying the 33,000 naira minimum wage as we speak, or the 30,000 naira minimum wage as the case may be. What is the issue with the back and forth? And speaking of 85,000 naira, is it even enough to suffice for everything, for a living condition of a family of 5? How much is a bag of rice right now? Let me be frank.
A bag of rice now is over 100,000. So if you are talking about 85,000, which means that 85,000 cannot even buy a bag of rice. Come to think, that 85,000 is in the value 85,000. What is the real value that you can get? Is less than 70 is less than 70% naira devaluation. So because the naira has devalued to appreciable level, that it means nothing. Come to think of it, if the state, my basic problem now, I've shown that the gross inefficiency at the level, at the national level, not being able to apply themselves. I appreciate the policy they are doing, but they themselves are having the best of time. They are not making any sacrifices. They are getting what they are supposed to do. Those are the crosses I have with them. And for the fact that gross inefficiency across the ministry, the ministry, many ministers are not even contributing any meaningful quota. We are talking of rationalizing the ministry to be able to. So I was thinking at that level, there should be, the government should begin to take up a lean approach. Lean approach in the sense that they should restructure in the sense that, I mean, come to point of applying RSIA factor, because there are so many ministry agencies that are working at court processes that are not delivering the real value. Those are the real thing we are having now, that at federal level we are not applying a lean structure to reflect the true situation. Most people who are running are having the best of that, and yet the people are suffering. At the subnational level is even worse, in the sense that if there is an increase, physical allocation increase of about 60 billion, and the state are still saying they cannot afford to pay. That is, and come to think of it, the foolproof what is exacerbating this poll is the question of insecurity. The insecurity is the one that is taking big shot, because if people cannot go to farm, how would they do? The issue of religion bigotrism, the issue of not unity, those are the real issue. So what I'm saying is this: most of the factors that is causing this problem are within the control of our people, but some few people are taking advantage. Those are the areas I'm saying now that our people should be watchful enough, because they are using, the political class are using Nigerians as a tool of mercenary to continue to foment this trouble. They will come and use this trouble to make sure that they encircle some few people who are bubiri. For instance, after every election, people become extremely very rich out of any election. And also all these minutes, most of these politicians, they build a caucus to inflict period and injury, and they pay some few people, and by the time you come, they say everything is for Nigeria. You are talking everything they do. For instance, how many of Nigeria? Less than 2% of Nigeria don't feel any fair. But when they build policy, they spend 2 billion, trillion of naira, you find out that they will say it's for Nigeria. Yeah, it's for Nigeria. What is the percentage of Nigerians that benefited from it vis-a-vis the amount of money that goes? Those are the real issues we should talk about.
Of course, real issues indeed to talk about. Nigerians are still reacting to this recent development from the World Bank, coming out to say over 129 million Nigerians right now are facing multi-dimensional poverty, and it could even be more, sadly. But anyway, we'll go off on a break now. When we return, the conversation continues. To stay. Right here in our Lagos studio, we have been talking about the issue of the World Bank revelation saying that 100 million, or over 100 million Nigerians right now are into multi-dimensional poverty, or under multi-dimensional poverty. And I still have my guest with me in the studio, Kenny Otumba, analyzing all of the details you need on this. I'd love us to talk about the people right now, because just as you mentioned, when two elephants fight, the grass suffers for it. And now in this case, Nigerians are the ones really going through a lot: cost of living, the issue of fuel. Let's not also forget that the food aspect as well, which is truly very important. How have Nigerians been taking all of this? Because from what I see, there's this skill of being able to adapt to any policy from the government and just to move away.
Thank you very much. Nigerians have been very resilient. Nigerians deserve, kudos. Let me be frank with you. Come to think of it, in Kenya, the food inflation just rose from 4% to 7%. We can see the colossal damage that they caused. You can see how much but for Nigerians who have been in, inflation has gone up to about 40-something percent, and is now around the food inflation has come to about 37.8%. Come to think of it, in Kenya it rose from 4% to 7%. Look at what happened in Nigeria. We are still on 37.8%. Look, life has been extremely very hard for Nigerians. Let's be frank. It's only Nigerians are very resilient. But what we still say is that, look, Nigeria, take your destiny in your hand. Take your destiny in your hand in the sense that don't allow yourself to be used as a tool of mercenary to foment issue. If you look at it carefully, if you talk about the insecurity, despite the fact that we have a foreign mercenary that come from West African region, which are Nigerians who are involved, the day we begin to look at ourselves from the point of showing kind of feeling the effect within ourselves, we need to fulfill the empathy for ourselves. So I'm saying, Nigerian, one, what you have is your destiny is in your hand. You own your land. Do you own your people? The day we begin to see ourselves in ourselves, that is when we begin to recover ourselves. Because look, if you don't recover, if you do not discover who you are, look, Nigeria begin to say that we're very poor, which means we've discovered ourselves. Now there's a need for us to recover ourselves from dungeon, because look, the people have the power. They have the power to some sort of vote for the leader. So which means our leader should be an employee. They should report to us. So if they are not giving us what they want, we should hold them accountable from the councillor level to the federal level. What we're saying that we know the problem that we have at the federal level. We know now that we're saddled with political patronage. We know now that people are living the best of their life. We know now that they've not been able to make enough sacrifices. But look at it carefully. The entire government machinery, federal government, is controlling about 48%. The 52% goes down to the state. How has the state been functioning? Have people been able to hold the state accountable? The subnational, the government, and as the people be able to hold the political class, the councillor, the House of Assembly, we need to take decision. The decision we need to take is take different class, political class, make them accountable for them. Because if people at the grassroots level, if the councillor, if the House of Assembly, if the House of Rep are able to do what is required of them in view of the concession allowance, in view of the budgeting they have, they will touch life more. So if, for instance, they touch more life at the base level, look at the issue of this local government financial autonomy. It is the people at the subnational level that are creating an issue, creating a menace out of it. Even some are even saying now that they should be sharing formula. Now they were saying now that the federal allocation will go through the local government. There are some states that are beginning to look at other songs or other bill in order to be able to share between them. Even though I agree there must be some sharing formula, because there are some a lot of interlink between the services provided by at the primary level and at the secondary level. For instance, if you talk about local government, if you talk about the public health at the region, it's provided at that level. But we're seeing next to nothing. So even though I appreciate the fact that there must be a kind of collaboration and concerted effort to ensure that let us first have autonomy. But the problem we have is that even if the autonomy we're talking, look at how the local government election have been done in a state, almost the controlling state, the party will swing up. Have there been any credible election at that level? There's no credible election. Look at what's happening in River. What I'm saying is our people will cause more problem to ourselves, because we are greedy, we are selfish, we are self-centered, and we believe that being in government is the only conduit pipe. So until we change, until we internalize certain value system, we're not going anywhere.
So what you're saying is every single person is involved in all of this. When you said change, you made me remember the former administration, Muhammad Buhari, where he said the change begins with you. The change that you want should start from within. And right now you are tolling towards that direction as well.
What I'm saying, my own change is different. My own change concept is internalizing the right values within you. See Nigerian in a Nigerian. See Nigerian first, know where you come from. But in Nigeria today, people are quick to see that I'm a Yoruba man, I'm a Fulani man, I'm from Edo, rather than coming to talk about being proud about Nigeria. That's what I'm saying. We should internalize the right value of the kind of Nigeria, because it is the quality of people that determine the quality of the nation, whichever way you look at it. What is the percentage of all these leaders we are talking about? They are led between 1% of the entire population. And the people who are really enjoying it, with the elites are enjoying it in addition, cannot be more than 2 or 3%. Which is, if you look at it, about 4% people are the one taking, managing Nigeria, and over 90-something people are not feeling the impact. So what means, if you look at it from that pro rata basis, it means that if we better organize ourselves at the local level, if we better organize ourselves at the community level, if we're able to make demand, if we're able to demand for accountability of these leaders, if the cushioning effect, why must the local government be looking, why must the people at the rural area be looking for the impact of the federal government when they have government close to them? So I'm saying now that internalizing what Nigeria should be should start from Nigeria, whether you're in rural area, whether you're in urban area, whether you are about poor. The question question is, have we internalized the concept of patriotism? Have we internalized the concept of oneness? Have we internalized the concept that if I don't want to suffer, I don't want other people to suffer? The care, the love, is not existing.
Okay.
Nigeria is living extremely very toxic environment. Everybody for himself, God for us all. I mean, it's just like the last administration. What we're seeing is selfish greed at all levels. We know the problem we have at government. We know government comes in, come and go. But the people, has people change? If people do not change, there won't be any change.
So orientation is the word, is the key word right now, over and over and over again.
No, person to person orientation. For instance, the national orientation has failed. What we're saying is the elitists, that's why in the media, we should begin to talk of promoting the
As we tend to wind up the conversation, I would love us to talk about the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Alleviation, where we've seen that ministry has really not functioned to the way it ought to function. It's sad that we are going through a lot in the country and we have that ministry, and then I remember when we had the conversation of having some persons removed and changed from different parties, different political seats in government, and we did see and also hear that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs might be scrapped as well. Away from that, what are other strategies you think that the government should engage in for a lasting solution?
For instance, now, government should begin to study the economic policies and reforms. I appreciate the reform that's over. Most of the institutions are very weak. There's a need to strengthen the institution. And also, they could look towards who are in that institution. Many of the people in charge of all these MDAs are disconnected from this. That is, they have no idea of what they are planning for. It is a paper manager we're doing. We need people who have idea of what we're going through to be able to plan well for us. Then we're talking about inclusive growth. For instance, we don't have inclusive growth. Only few people are growing, many people are wallowing in deep poverty. Until we begin to have an inclusiveness in what we do, we're not going here. The inequalities is very good. The inequality between the rich and the poor is extreme now. That's why we have the poor, the issue. For instance, that's why we have the issue. The inequality, the income inequality, access to services inequality, access to good life, because many of these things have been politicized. Rather than looking at the rich, come to think of it now, where people are still fighting, they want to create state. Whereas even the state they've created, 36 states, only 4 that are functional. People are still presenting bill to create state. Is that what is important? Or you understand? Or we should restructure, reposition, and have a result template for Nigeria, out of which, look, we should also, there will be a clear transparency. There's no transparency we're doing. There's no transparency across board. Nigerians are almost in the dark in what is happening. All we read is billion going on. Billion will be announced. At the end of the day, few Nigerians will be touched. We don't have the right statistics to know what they're doing. The other one is the subnational level. At the subnational government, they are grossly inefficient. You can imagine what is happening across the state. If the states have an increase of 60 billion and they cannot even afford to pay minimum, what is happening in the state? Only few states are making a public-private participation. Quite a lot of other states are dosa, because many people are there. They are emergency people. They are not contributing any meaningful thing into them. Then this reform of local government should come. Nigeria should rise up to defend the cause of local government. And then too, you can imagine what has frustrated them. Even the people in local government are political stooges of all these people. But that doesn't mean we should not even rise. Despite what is happening now. For instance, in Rivers, you can see, even the so-called election that won, has been described as sham. You can see the political instability. They're struggling for power, not struggling for the welfare of the people, struggling to control the financial power of the state, has discredited the state. You can imagine. Look at this same thing has gone to almost Nigeria. Such an issue has happened in Imo State. Such an issue has happened in most of the north. Look at the exacerbation of the frustration, the desperation, and the stress we have in the north, in the northeast, in the northwest. Despite the commission being said that our people are monumentally poor. For instance, the poverty ranges from in the Undo 27.1% to as much as 91% in Sokoto. Are we saying Sokoto? 91% of people are poor. Are we saying they don't have fiscal allocation every month? Are we showing now that government do not have the presence over there? And yet we are talking about 91% poverty people in the north. Quite a lot of money is going there, but what do we have to show? Even in the south, we have about 60 something. So I think now that accountability, holding our leadership accountability at the lowest level to upper level is what will save Nigeria. And also internalizing the real change in ourselves, because many people are the one causing the law. Look at what what is happening now. Are we saying it's government that is causing it? The fraudulent activity, the criminal activity, the falsifying of the result. For instance, even the palliative that government has rolled out, people are rebranding and reselling to the people. People are even using that the political. Is it government that is causing that? What I'm saying is until every Nigerian internalizing the change, until every Nigerian are law abiding, until every Nigerian do what is right, what is just at the right time, we are not going to see the light of the day.
Absolutely.
But I pray that we will see the light of the day, because we can't wait for 15 years. You understand?
That's a long time indeed.
This
yes.
administration has a 4-year gestation period.
We need to wrap up now.
In the next 4 years,
right.
8 years. Are we saying we are going to look at the suffering we will suffer in the last 8 years? Are we saying we are going to suffer another 8 years again? In addition,
okay, we really need to wrap up now. Really, a lot of things has been said, and everything I have deduced is right now what Nigerians are going through is a situation of suffering and smiling. And just as Kenny said, the change that you want should begin with you in your own small corner. What are you doing to ensure that Nigeria is indeed better for you, for me, and of course for everybody? Well, we have been talking about the recent report from the World Bank saying that over 129 million Nigerians are currently trapped in poverty, which truly is a lot. And I have been speaking to Kenny Otumba, a public analyst right here. It's a pleasure having you here. Always a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's our bits this morning right here in our Lagos studio. Let's just hope that things eventually gets better in Nigeria. My name is Anuoluwapo Stevens. God bless Nigeria.